You know how you're in a meeting and you really can't think of what you want to say, but you know it would be really good if you could think of it right then?
Right.
Well, when you're a writer, you can think of it 4 hours later and write it down, and then it sounds fresh. But it is true that I had more time to think of a comeback.
Hey, and welcome to the PBS Books Readers Club.
Today we welcome New York Times bestselling author Bonnie Garmus to discuss her international hit, Lessons in Chemistry.
Lessons in Chemistry follows Elizabeth Zott, a brilliant young chemist who struggles to be taken seriously in the male-dominated world of the 1950s. Suddenly a single mother, she reluctantly finds herself as the host of Supper at 6, a seemingly typical cooking show, but Zott uses this newfound platform to teach housewives chemistry and how to find their self-worth.
Lessons in Chemistry is a thought-provoking mix of humor and heart, all about self-discovery, empowerment, and defying the odds.
Hi, I'm Fred Nahat alongside Lauren Smith, joined by literary expert and award-winning writer Princess Weeks and our resident librarian and PBS Books National Director Heather Marie Montilla.
Before we delve into this book, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts on Lessons in Chemistry in the comments. What did you think of this book? We love reading and responding to your comments in the chat. It's so fun.
And join the PBS Books Readers Club Facebook group to connect with other book enthusiasts, share recommendations, and discuss your favorite reads all month long.
It's the best book club ever. These folks give such amazing recommendations. And don't forget, please share this event with your friends, because friends do not let friends miss out on great books. Click share on Facebook or YouTube right now. Honestly, it helps us more than you know, and we're very grateful.
All right, so let's discuss Bonnie Garmus's enlightening novel, Lessons in Chemistry. So, what'd y'all think?
I was so pleasantly surprised by everything about this book. The protagonist, Elizabeth, is so captivating. And as you guys know, I've worked at a bookstore forever. I have seen this book so much, and nothing about the cover prepared me for how thoughtful it was, how sad it was, how romantic it was. There were so many layers to this story that just kept me going. I listened to the audiobook and I could not stop listening. It was so addictive, and I love the characters, I love the story, and I love cooking. So it was like a perfect everything for me.
Yeah. I have to piggyback on what you said, because I work in a library and this book flies off the shelf.
Yeah.
Every time it comes in, it's out, right? But I agree, it was brilliant. I was so surprised, the complexity of it, the characters, the nod to libraries, the importance of libraries within society. I can't wait to talk about that. Dogs, you guys know I have a dog.
6:30 the dog.
6:30,
And all I can think about is, how can I teach my dog more words? Tell me, you have a dog, right? Don't
yeah.
you think? I mean, how many words does your dog know?
I don't know, but she's smart.
Right.
She's smart. She outsmarts me on a daily basis, that's for sure.
I loved Elizabeth Zott's character. She was so deep. There were so many things about her, and there was a lot of just levels of womanhood incorporated into this book, because she's trying to find her way at work, and of course she's in the 1950s, but we still have struggles with that as women even now. She wasn't really intending to become a mother, and then she had to sort of figure out how she was going to do that. And then, I don't know, the whole thing just really spoke to me, because she's navigating so many different parts of being a woman: work, motherhood, romance, and just trying to figure out how to do this. And she starts off with no help as a mother too, and the importance of her neighbor's companionship, I thought, was really eloquent and smart. And I thought there's so much to discuss. I can't wait to talk with Bonnie.
Agreed.
So good.
So, for me, variations on a theme: med behaving badly. In this case, Western civilization behaving badly, the era, the barriers. But it doesn't seem, no matter what faced this Elizabeth Zott in her life, she was able to overcome diversity. And you know what, the hits, they just keep coming. I mean, it's tragic personal loss, it's the theft of research and other professional gains. It is ramping up into a glamorous business that she was nonplussed by. Television, okay, we'll give it a try.
Oh my gosh, I wish that I had her immediate comebacks. You know,
I
when
know.
when you get
Or at least
into an
a knife.
argument with somebody, and like you say, like later you think about, oh, I wish I would have said this. She always has the perfect thing to say in the moment, so calm and just steel. I love her.
And I wonder if Bonnie had those comebacks immediately, or if she kept on rewriting them, because they were so perfect.
Oh, we'll find out.
Yes.
And my favorite, like, smaller thing is the idea of being like this smart, forward-thinking woman, and then raising a daughter, knowing what the obstacles are, knowing them personally, and knowing that you didn't get to achieve everything you wanted, but still teaching her to go for it anyway.
Yeah.
And I just think like that was just very moving to me, because isn't that what we do? We always want better for the next group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the only two characters that end up at the conclusion of this book on the honor roll, per se, is 630 the dog and Mad the daughter. And it's just characters abound. It's really, really incredible. All right, Lessons in Chemistry author Bonnie Garmus is standing by to join us in a moment. But first, let's talk about how you can join the conversation. Sign up for our PBS Books e-newsletter at pbsbooks.org/subscribe for exclusive book recommendations, author interviews, and so much more. It's the best way to get the latest book updates straight to your inbox.
And did you know that our PBS Books YouTube channel features hundreds of author interviews and fascinating literary stories? Geraldine Brooks, Percival Everett on his bestseller James, Kristen Hanna on The Women, Shelby Van Pelt on Remarkably Bright Creatures. Our book friends, they're all there on YouTube. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and immerse yourself in a world of books and authors.
And if you love the PBS Books Readers Club, consider supporting your local PBS station. Now more than ever, this program and your PBS station are counting on support from viewers just like you. So please, if you can, visit pbsbooks.org/donate to make a gift.
pbsbooks.org/donate will take you right to your local station's giving page. There, among many other thank you gift options, you can support PBS Books directly by selecting one of our special thank you gifts, like the PBS Books Readers Club book bag. This stylish and sturdy tote is the perfect way for you to carry around your books, e-reader, even a laptop. It's even got our logo so you can show your support for public media. We also have the official PBS Books Readers Club mug, just like we have here on set. It says on the back, "My weekend is booked," and it is a crowd favorite.
Well, and the fun doesn't stop there, because PBS members get access to PBS Passport, the member exclusive section on the PBS app, where you can stream full seasons of incredible PBS shows, including masterpiece dramas, The Great American Recipe Cooking Competition, and so much more. And now let's turn the page to our book choice for this month, Lessons in Chemistry, as we welcome in our guest author, Bonnie Garmus. Welcome to the PBS Books Readers Club. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm thrilled to be one of your picks, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Bonnie, thank you so much for your book. We're excited to dig in. So, Lessons in Chemistry follows Elizabeth Zott, a brilliant chemist born in the wrong time to be taken seriously. What inspired you to tell this story?
Well, when I wrote the book, I started around 2013, and I'd been in a meeting that day where I wasn't taken seriously. It was a meeting of all men. It was very typical for me because I used to work a lot in technology. And as I was leaving the meeting that day, I kept thinking to myself, how many other women's talents have been wasted this way? And it made me mad enough that when I got back to my desk, instead of working on the thing that I was employed to do, I wrote the first chapter of Lessons in Chemistry.
That's amazing.
Perfect.
Yes.
I love when revenge.
Yes,
comes
revenge
together.
writing.
Revenge writing is excellent,
I love
right? What's your zodiac sign?
Okay, Aries.
Me too. When's your birthday?
It's this week. It's Friday, April 18th.
A happy early birthday.
Both of you.
Fire sign.
Yeah, I was like, as a fellow Aries, when you said that, I can sense it. And Elizabeth is such a strong, vibrant character. I love her way of thinking and speaking. How did you come to develop her and her character as your lead?
Well, when I started writing her, I could hear her very strongly. And at that time, I really felt like I needed a new role model in my life for work and just for my personal life. I needed some woman that I could really look up to, who knew what she wanted and knew who she was and never questioned, anything unless Elizabeth Zott bases her opinions on facts and evidence. And I kind of love that. So that's where she came from. But really, that was the inspiration. I needed a role model.
Just designed the woman you
Exactly.
wanted to be in your life.
Perfect.
Calvin Evans was also a very important character in this story. Can you tell us a little more about his development?
Yeah, I when I thought about having a romantic interest for Elizabeth, I immediately wanted to create a man who was attracted to her for her mind, not because of the way she looked and not because of the way she acted, but because of the way she essentially was. He respected her. When he was at work, he actually told his boss that he thought she was smarter than he was. He wasn't intimidated by her smart brain. And so I thought, what a great role model for men. um, that Calvin Evans would be the kind of guy who would recognize who she was and support that.
I will just say, I'm going to just give you a compliment. This is Fred. Fred has supported me in my career for so long. He is Calvin. It's amazing.
Well,
Good role model here, right?
Listen, all the women that surround me are smarter than me. Including my dearly departed mother, my wife, Wendy, everybody. So it's a strategy, right? It's definitely a strategy. So, Bonnie, they say never work with kids or animals. So incredible characters in the book. The scene stealer for me, the dog, 630. How did you manifest to that four-legged character, and how did you decide on that unique name and the unique perspective?
Well, as I was writing the book, I didn't really know that 630 was going to have thoughts. But as I wrote the book, I had a dog at that time. Her name was Friday. And I read everything I do out loud. And so Friday heard the whole book over and over. And she really enjoyed the dog parts. But I think I started to realize as I wrote it that not that I understood exactly what she was thinking, but it was really obvious to me that animals have opinions. They process ideas. They make decisions every day. They have brains like we do. And we sometimes as humans forget that they have brains and that they do make decisions. And so I decided to add that dog perspective and have a dog comment on us as people and all the stupid decisions we make and all the lies we tell that I think dogs wouldn't quite, they wouldn't quite fathom why we would have to do that. What would be the point of that? Why are we always in trouble? Why are we always going down these weird paths? And so I wanted that overlooked perspective to come into the book. And as for the name, I knew that it was going to be supper at 6. And so I kind of wanted the dog to be the after part of dinner. And also there's this idea of 6:30 in chemistry as well. It has to do with temperature. And so I thought that was a really good way to meld it into 6:30.
Love that. Some parallels between 6:30 and our octopus friend, Marcellus
Right.
from Remarkably Bright Creatures. Have you read that book, Bonnie?
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah. We talked to Shelby Van Pelt in one of our previous episodes, and it's so interesting to see what the animals think of us.
Yes.
I love that.
And they're so confused. They're like,
why
again?
do you do these things? Oh my God.
Well, I make better decisions than you do.
Right.
Yes. Bonnie, the chapter about Elizabeth's experience with early motherhood really stuck with me. Needless to say, she struggled with her newborn, a mama myself, and despite having all the support that anybody could ever hope for, it's just a really intense moment in time, and one that even a brilliant scientist like Elizabeth can't easily figure out until she finds that she can rely on support from her neighbor, Harriet. Can you talk to us about why you shaped her experience of motherhood the way that you did and the importance of support among women?
Well, I wanted to represent the single mom out there. There are a lot of them. And I wanted to represent the fact that you really can't raise a child on your own. It really does, as they used to say, it really does take a village. But Elizabeth thought that she could do it all on her own, and that was her weakness. And so I wanted to bring in the neighbor, an older woman who had very little education and had a tough life, and have her wisdom be part of what helped and guided Elizabeth. And that way I wanted to create a row of 3 women. One is Mad, she's the young one. Madeline is being raised without limits. Then we have Elizabeth, who's well educated, but has limited herself in a way because she can't see well into how you raise a child, how you do this. This is an experiment she's never run, and she doesn't know what the outcomes, she doesn't know what to do. And then we have Harriet, who's been through it all and has this gift that she can give Elizabeth of support. And for Elizabeth, support is really important. It's female friendship is something that she is not familiar with. And then she finds it and she realizes how powerful it is.
We have such expertise featured in this book. Rowing, cooking, chemistry were all discussed in great detail. And so specifically, how much of that detail came from personal experiences and how much of it was research and finding a way to meld all of those different flavors into this work?
Well, I'm a rower, so that's the only part that I knew.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I had to put in something I knew about. And so, in terms of chemistry, I'm not a scientist, but I did buy a book, a chemistry textbook off of eBay for like $3.99, and I taught myself chemistry, old chemistry, 50s chemistry. And I had some major accidents along the way, and a few major incidents that required the help of the fire department
Oh
in
my
London.
gosh. Please
Yeah.
elaborate.
Yeah, well, okay, so I'm no longer allowed to say what the experiments were because they don't want people to come. Like,
Right.
people are going to do this, but I did use this book that has essentially been banned. It's the golden book of children's chemistry experiments. That it was released in the 40s or something, and they had to ban it because kids were blowing themselves up. Now I know why. That's the book I use, and so I did have 2 accidents in our kitchen in London, and both times the fire brigade came, and the second time, they brought me a fire extinguisher of
Oh
my
my
own.
gosh. Like, you're trouble. Yeah, you need to have this.
Yeah. As for cooking, it's interesting, a lot of people think I must love to cook, but the truth is I'm not a great cook, and I've never really loved cooking. I can do it, but I'm not a chef, but I love and appreciate people who cook. And so I wanted to kind of highlight that what they're doing in the kitchen every day, the reason why it tastes good is because they're chemists, whether they know it or not. They're chemists. They're high-level chemists.
Your book highlighted the important role libraries play in people's lives. Elizabeth Zott, despite lacking formal education, becomes a successful chemist thanks to her ability to educate herself using the resources available at the library. Similarly, Mad Zott seeks answers at her local Carnegie Library. Why did you include the library in your book, and what role did libraries play in your life?
Libraries have always been enormously important to me. As a child, I had a very distinct and loud stutter. It followed me for most of my life, straight into adulthood. It took a long time to overcome that. And when you have a stutter, you stay silent. And one of the things you can do when you're silent is to read. And I had a librarian who would constantly send a note to my classroom and telling the teacher that she needed me in the library when what she was doing was saving me from embarrassment and humiliation. Um, because of her and because my parents were huge readers, I became a huge reader and I thought there was nothing better than reading. And I realized that you could go anywhere in a book, you could teach yourself anything. And I'll tell you a quick story. A woman wrote me. She lives in New York and she has no formal education. She never graduated from high school and she read lessons in chemistry. And she said, I work at a copy shop and I'm never going to be anything. On my whole life, people have told me I will never become anything. And from her email, I could tell that she was really smart. Turned out she had self educated in the library. And so I told her that Elizabeth Zott would tell her to go to a community college and enroll. And she did. And today she's in law school.
Oh, that's such a
I
good
love
story.
that.
I could cry. That's so
Story.
sweet.
Wow.
I listened to the audiobook of this, and the dialogue is already so perfect, but when you hear it being spoken, it's so witty, it's so perfect, and it really highlights the personalities of each of these characters. How did you find the right voice for not just Elizabeth, but for everyone else in this book? Because they're all so unique, very specific, and a great balance of insightful, charming, and snarky at the same time.
Yeah, there's some snark in there. To tell you the truth, we got 4 audition tapes. This is at a time where nobody really knew about the book. And this one actress, she's British, by the way, and I think she does a great American accent. She really stood out to me as the voice that I wanted to hear. And so we selected her, and I think that she did a really good job. I know she pronounced Jack LaLanne's name wrong.
She did.
It's Jack LaLanne. Sorry, to the LaLanne family. But otherwise, I think she did a wonderful job, and she found those voices herself.
And in terms of just writing the dialogue for the characters, did you how many times did it take you to come up with all those one-liners or all of
Those Zott comebacks.
those
Yes.
comebacks? Yeah, what was writing that like?
You know what? I loved writing that because you know how you're in a meeting and you really can't think of what you want to say, but you know it would be really good if you could think of it right then?
Right.
Well, when you're a writer, you can think of it 4 hours later and write it down, and then it sounds fresh. Um, yeah, so that's what I was really doing with that. And yeah, that part was fun for me, but it is true that I had more time to think of a comeback.
We call those Zot Zingers.
Not singers.
So your success fairly recent to this level, and I'm assuming when you reach this level of success and this wide reach as an author, there's a like endless reader feedback loop. Interesting in the book, some characters actually have a conversation about how readers often come up with their own interpretation behind an author's works that aren't true or aren't intended. We're wondering, have you ever had that experience, and have you come across like different absurd or bananas theories that really never even occurred to you?
Well, I've heard a lot of different things, but honestly, most people seem to find themselves in the book and they really latch on to a certain character, and then they explain to me how that character represents them. But I will tell you that what's been most interesting for me in terms of other people interpreting the book is other nations interpreting the book. And I did a big Zoom call with Korea. Several hundred people were on this call. Maybe it was like 500. And one of the questions was, are all the characters Korean? And I said, "Oh, that's a great question because, yes, of course they can be Korean." And she said, "I knew they were Korean because this is exactly how Koreans act." And I think that that's a sign of creating a universal character. And then same thing in Turkey, I got exactly the same question. Are all of these characters Turkish? And I thought, wow, that's really great because it just points to the commonality of our experience around the world and how we all see our problems the same way and how we see our solutions in a lot of down the same paths. I think most people want safety, they want security, they want love, and they want a good education for their children. And as I've traveled around the world, I hear that over and over and over, and I hear people working very hard to get there.
So I want to acknowledge some of the darker scenes. Elizabeth Zott has not had an easy life. She's attacked really right in the very beginning of the book. Some of this must have been difficult to write. Why did you feel it was important to include these scenes, and how'd you get through it?
Well, those scenes, the dark scenes were really hard for me to write. They're very emotional. And I think in terms of the first, sexual assault scene, 1 out of 5 American women will be assaulted in their lifetime. That's a really, really high statistic. And I think that sometimes that it gets buried because people say it can't possibly be that high. The reason why people think that is that most women don't report their assaults because they're not believed or because they're blamed for their assaults. It was really important for me to put that in, and I really wanted that to be represented.
As you mentioned before, like we are still dealing with this today. You know, we talk about Elizabeth Zott facing discrimination in the 50s and 60s, but why it resonates all over the world is because we are still dealing with that. And even though women are now outperforming in higher education, there are still these massive barriers and so many different goalposts being moved. So what advice, if you, to channel your own Elizabeth Zott, what advice do you have for women who are trying to find their voice? You know, you found Elizabeth's voice. How do you think other people can find their Elizabeth voice?
I get asked this a lot, especially by young women who really want to know what they should be doing now. And this isn't just in the United States, this is in every corner of the world. And the one thing I always say is you have to speak up. It's really easy not to speak up, and it's a really safe not to speak up. But when you do speak up, you give someone else in that room courage. And so whether you know it or not, speaking up has a chemical effect on the room. You become the catalyst for change when you speak. And I've seen that over and over in meetings and certainly down the political arena when people are speaking up more than ever, hopefully more than ever. It's really important not to be complacent. And I was just interviewing, no, they were interviewing me, but I started interviewing them. Um, a, a class of 15-year-old Muslim girls. And one of them said this really profound thing to me. She asked the same question, what should we do now? And I said, speak up. And she said, yes, because we're 15 years old, and that may seem very young to a lot of people around the world, but we don't have time for anyone else to, keep delaying and stalling change. We have to act now. So we are going to act now. I thought, wow, 15. Good for her.
Yeah, that is incredible.
Yeah.
You have amazing stories.
Yeah.
Yes, I've gotten to talk to especially a lot of kids. And that has been the greatest thing for me because I feel very good about this next generation coming up. They're strong.
Yes.
We gotta be. All these
Yeah,
recessions.
We have no choice.
You've got to be, yeah.
Were there any scenes or elements that you wanted to include in the story that didn't make it to the final version?
Yeah, there was. One of my goals was to show Elizabeth Zott as she was a local force in her community on television, and then it got syndicated, so she was a national force on television. But I wanted to take her to the next level, and so I used to have a chapter where she's called by Jackie Kennedy and JFK to talk to the nation about how to prepare for the Cuban Missile Crisis because she's so even and calm and she tells everyone what they must do. But at the end of it, instead of just addressing the American audience, she addresses Khrushchev himself. And it was sort of when I was writing, I was thinking, and this is before, everything with Putin, but I was thinking of a character like Putin. And I really appreciate what she was saying, which is, you really shouldn't come up against Americans because once we are united, even if we don't agree with each other on everything, when we're united, we're unstoppable. And we are unstoppable. And she lets him have it. But anyway, they cut that. They thought it was too political.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
We're happy to have that little tidbit.
Tidbit,
here.
absolutely. Yeah.
For sure. What was the most challenging aspect about writing this novel?
I think, usually it's finding the time. I was working full time and I finally realized if I was going to get serious about this novel, then I had to put myself on a serious schedule of getting up every day at 4:30 and working before work. And
Wow.
I know I'm a rower, so you know what? Rowers get up early. That's kind of good training. And so that was very helpful. But that way, you get a lot done before work and then you go to work and you go, oh, well, I hope there's something left over.
Right.
But yeah, no, it was really the discipline of it. I think writing a novel is kind of like, I guess, running 5 marathons back to back. Um, and I think I didn't really realize how hard it would be because I'm used to writing very short things. Like 50 words a day is really good for a copywriter, and 1,000 words a day is unthinkable. But you see novelists saying, I write 1,000 words a day, and I think, how? How do you do that? I rewrite a lot, so that's part of my process.
Was that your real job, a copywriter that you were going
Yeah.
to after your writing sessions?
Yeah, I'm a copywriter and creative director. Yeah.
Okay.
So where I grew up in Detroit, the famous novelist Elmore Leonard was a copywriter at an ad agency, did the exact same thing, and of course gained so much notoriety, especially in his genre. I'm also wondering about your sort of parallel experience. I love the audiobook. I dipped into the hardcover book and actually watched the TV version first. I know it became a huge hit probably pretty quickly for you. What was that experience like and what is it like now?
Well, the whole I didn't expect this book to be published, much less, take off, and neither did my agent, really. She was very honest with me. As she said, it's kind of a quirky book. We both believed in it, but we didn't really think it would hit a nerve, and we certainly never believed it would hit a nerve in faraway places and in Africa, in the Mideast. We really never saw that coming in South America. And so the whole world seems, in my opinion, to be saying, we can do better than this. We can do better. And I wanted Elizabeth Zott to be so attached to facts and evidence because I'm attached to facts and evidence. I miss them. Wish I could trust what I read all the time, but I can't. And so you have to develop a different skill for understanding how the world is going. Anyway, for me, that was really important. And then when it's a great honor to have your book picked up by Hollywood. it's a huge honor. It was a shock to me, and so it was great to have it made into a series. I didn't get to work on the series, but what an incredible experience.
How did you choose the title for this book? Because at first, when I saw the book, I would have never thought it would be everything. How did you pick this?
Okay, I didn't pick it. It turned out the name of the book originally was Introduction to Chemistry. And when my agent took it to Frankfurt to try to sell it, about 2 minutes before Frankfurt opened for business, she got a call from them, saying, "Your book is slotting into nonfiction," because it's called Introduction to Chemistry.
Does sound like a
Yeah,
course
it does.
book.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? They were absolutely right to flag that, and she kinda mentioned that to me before, "Should we be worrying about this title?" And so she actually said, "We have 2 minutes to come up with another title." And I said, "Okay," and she goes, "How about Lessons in Chemistry?" And I said, "Okay."
Wow.
There you go.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Kismet.
Don't mess with a
It turned out
copywriter when it comes to creating a title. Copywriters are key.
I know, it is I think copywriters it is so funny, there's so many of us, Salman Rushdie was a copywriter too. Kurt Vonnegut was a copywriter. Joseph Heller was a copywriter. So there's a whole legion of people who started in copywriting.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer, that that was your passion, or did that realization come later?
No, I wanted to be a writer from the time I was little, probably because of my librarian who was showing me ways to communicate, without speaking. And I wrote my first book when I was 5 years old, and it's a page long, and I illustrated it. And that never got published. Yeah,
Not yet.
not yet. Yeah, well, believe me, we don't want this one published. Um, I wrote another book when I was 12, and at that time, my librarian in middle school put my book in the library, and no one ever checked it out. And I know that because I checked every day to see if somebody checked it out.
Aw.
I know, that's okay. And then I wrote another book that got rejected 98 times because, yeah, I made a few mistakes. One, it was a novel that was 700 pages long, and you shouldn't do that for debut. And then I wrote Lessons in Chemistry, so I've been at this a while.
I'm always curious what it feels like for a writer to realize that their book really is going to be published, really is being read, really is a bestseller. Was there a moment in this journey that you felt like, oh my God, this is actually happening?
Well, you know, it was just so strange. I just couldn't figure out why people were reading it, or honestly, it was just, I'm used to writing for big audiences as a copywriter, but you're behind a wall. You're touting something else. And so this was really my work. And so I just kept waiting for the shoe to drop, and then it didn't really drop. And when I started hearing from people all over the world about how affected they were by the book, and both men and women, the book is particularly a favorite among chemists. And that's because chemists all over the world have said, "Thank you for not making us just meth producers."
Yes, I gave a copy of your book to my sister-in-law who teaches chemistry, and she loved it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So, no, I never knew that it would be big. And it took a long time to sink in that it would be, or that it was getting big. But I'm always still kind of surprised by the whole thing, honestly. I think I knew suddenly that it was more in the zeitgeist when my daughter changed my thing on her phone from saying mom to saying global phenomenon.
So cute.
That's so cute. I hope that my kids say that about me
Phenomenon.
one day.
I say it about you already.
Oh, thank you.
So, Bonnie, you talked about researching the science. I've been in television a good long time now. You really nailed the television production segments. What research did you put into that?
Hardly any. I don't watch cooking shows. Isn't that terrible? I wanted to create my own show without any kind of interference from what I would have seen. But I just remember as a kid watching TV and always having them say, and we'll be right back after station identification. And that phrase was just absolutely part of my brain, I think, because I did watch quite a bit of TV when I was a kid. And I just remember that kind of feeling of, people would gather around the TV because there was so little on and you would all watch. And Elizabeth Zott, when she says, children set the table, your mother needs a moment to herself, I was thinking only Elizabeth Zott would assume that children would watch her cooking show. Uh, but I think my whole purpose with her statement there at the end was that she's teaching the next generation that the mother is an important figure, that she's worthy, that she has value, and that they need to understand that she's a pillar, not just in the home, but in the community.
I also want to acknowledge the importance of mothers need a moment to themselves because that I often feel I never have a moment to myself. So even the ability for Elizabeth Zott to say that, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish my kids could all hear that.
I'll get
Yeah.
the audiobook.
Yeah, I do. I remember the same, when my kids were little, like I just need a moment. Actually, I needed weeks, but
I think I've said 100 times, I'm a person too.
Yeah. I was a person
No, you're
before I
not.
had you.
Exactly.
Hey, Bonnie, we're talking about moments. There is a moment in the book that, to me, they say justice delayed is justice denied. But when it came to Frask and she revealed the heist of this research and then revealed it later, that was a woman standing up for a woman based on a common experience, a real turning point. I guess that probably gives you chills when you write that segment.
Yeah, it did. I wanted to have, there's this belief, I think, a lot when we talk about sexism, we think it's just men, but it's not. Women are very sexist, and women do continue to spread the idea that girls do this and boys do that. And I want to address that in the book because I have worked with sexist women, and it's a problem. So I wanted Frass to learn that herself, being a sexist, was not going to help her and was actually going to hurt other women. When she finally understands that she and Elizabeth have shared a common experience and they've both been kept from their careers because of these experiences, then she realizes, wait, you know what? Time for me to help my fellow woman. And she does.
Yeah, lifting each other up. We've had more parallels with that. We talked with Kristen Hanna about her book, The Women, recently. And I think that was the main motivator for her, was talking about how women can lift each other up, we can support each other. I love those.
The acknowledgement.
Yeah, those parallels.
Yeah.
Question for you about your process. It sounds like as a rower, you're a morning person, but talk to us about your ideal writing setup. Do you like to write in the morning? Do you play music? Do you work in your home? Do you like to be out and about? Do you write on, legal paper like Kristen
I know.
Hanna? That still blows my mind. What's your
my God.
ideal setup?
Oh, I can't even read my handwriting. I mean, it's so bad. No, I get up pretty early and I like to write in the morning. That's my best time. I wanted to be one of those writers that could go to a coffee shop and write. But because I read everything out loud, that lasted one day. It turns out people around you don't want you to read out loud. Um, so I need silence. I can't play music. Nothing. I just need complete silence because when I'm doing as I write, I'm listening for the characters to tell me the story. And if there's a lot of distraction, I can't hear them.
A little more about process. You've shared that you always wanted to be an author. What is the most challenging part about being an author, and what's the most fun?
Well, the most fun is when it's done.
Amen.
Yeah. The most challenging part is, and I think every author goes through this, there are going to be days when you feel defeated and when you feel that everything you've written was just horrible and terrible. I go through lots of times where I delete everything that I just wrote. I always revisit what I wrote the day before every morning. And there are some mornings I wish I hadn't gotten up because I think this isn't the voice. This isn't what I wanted to say. Um, but I think, that constant challenge and holding yourself to a certain level can be difficult, but it also builds this kind of resilience and perseverance in you. And you just have to not keep up and you just have to keep going. And I think for me, being a rower, that's what rowing represents. You can't just stop in the middle of a race because you're tired. You can't just give up on your teammates or anything. You have to keep going and you have to do your best stroke as well as you can every time. And once I kind of translated that into a novel, I saw that it was going to be harder and harder, but worth it at the end. when it's over. Just like rowing. Oh, yeah, great, it's over. Yeah.
Bonnie, we are all about book recommendations on the PBS Books Readers Club. Have you read any good books lately? We would love to know your recent favorites.
Okay, so I have so many recent favorites that I had to write them down. But I'll tell you, I read this book by an Australian author. Her name is Madeline Gray, and it's called Green Dot. And it is really funny. She's a great writer. I think that was her debut book, and I thought it was really, really well done. I also just finished a book that's coming out in June called Endling by Maria Reva, and then Riva, I think it is. And also The Homemade God, which is also coming out in June by Rachel Joyce. I'm pretty excited to read. I haven't read it yet, but I'm really excited to read Melinda French's new book. Melinda French Gates' new book called I think it's called The Next Day. I'm super excited to read that. And then one of my favorite authors is Ocean Vuong, and he's written, I mean, I love everything he's written. But he just finished a book called The Emperor of Gladness, and I haven't read it yet, but I'm definitely reading it because I love everything he writes.
Do you have a favorite book from your childhood? You mentioned you were a big reader, thanks in part to your librarian and your parents. Were there any books that sparked your love of reading?
Harriet the Spy was my guide. I think that's what made me become a writer in some respects. It was the most subversive book you could read as a kid. It's really amazing the depth she gives to those characters. And Harriet, of course, keeps a notebook on all the kids that she can't stand at school. And she writes horribly vicious things about them. I mean, this is the sort of literature you don't often find in kid lit, because often in kid lit it's sort of been, smoothed over and everyone's happy. But Harriet's miserable. She's going through real things, and her friends are going through real things. And so that book for me was really big. And also Roald Dahl, I loved him, especially Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Matilda.
Yeah.
Yes, Matilda.
Matilda.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love Matilda.
If you could invite a character from any book to dinner, who would you invite and why?
Oh, it's so funny you should say that because it would be Matilda.
Good question.
Yeah. When I was writing Madzop, I thought a lot about Matilda. And although they're different, I think Matilda would have a lot to teach me.
Absolutely. And they both love the library.
They do, which I love.
What's the best advice you've ever received, either about writing or life, or anything in between, rowing?
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably, my dad was real. Well, my parents were really great. I was very lucky to have great parents. But my dad used to say when we were young and there were 4 girls, and he was such an athlete, and he wanted us all to be athletic, and we all were. But I mean, I always remember this thing he used to say, which is, um, people will try to stop you, and people try to tell you that you're not good enough. And it's up to you whether you're going to accept that or not. You don't have to accept what other people say. You just have to keep going. Your job is just to keep going. And I've kind of kept that my whole life, that idea that it's up to us through thick and thin to keep going. Yeah, I think that for me has been really important, and certainly in rowing, it's the same. You have to keep going.
Oh, that's lovely advice from your dad. My dad would just growl at me before soccer games, but I think he meant the same thing that your dad said more eloquently.
Yeah. My dad was more like, don't whine, don't cry, do your best, and just
Suck it up
just
and put
do
some
it.
dirt on
Yeah.
it.
Right, exactly.
That's a Scott Smith line right there.
But 4 sisters, like Little Women, that's so fun.
I love
it.
Yeah. It was 4 girls. They really wanted a boy, so when I was born, they hadn't picked up out a girl name, and on my birth certificate it just says girl. Yeah.
There it goes.
Well, I will say, as probably the only person in the building who remembers Jack LaLanne on television, you can take me back to the 60s anytime, especially when it's to reckon with our progress, through narrative. And it's just been so wonderful. There's so much meaning in there. I'm just wondering, what do you hope readers take away from your book?
I really hope right now, especially, that readers take away the idea that change is up to you, and that not only are you completely capable of it, it's your biological imperative to change. Your body changes every day. If you really see things in the world right now that you don't like, stand up and speak out and change it. Don't be afraid because you are actually biologically, chemically built for this. You're good at it. So don't worry about that part of it.
It's a strong message. Finally, Bonnie, anything you'd like to say to your readers?
Thank you, readers. Oh my gosh, I have wonderful readers. They write me every day. I have a 15-year-old boy from London who wrote me recently, and you know how they kind of make kids write authors sometimes? He wrote me and he said, "Dear Bonnie Garmis, thank you for writing lessons in chemistry. It was way better than Lord of the Flies."
High praise.
I know.
And I went, wow, I really arrived. But honestly, all readers, all ages, all genders, it's been amazing, and I thank every single one of them.
It's beautiful.
Love that.
Such a wonderful and universal story. Bonnie Garmis, thank you. Thank you ever so much for joining us on the PBS Books Readers Club. We appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite.
What an amazing conversation with Bonnie Garmis.
Oh, she had the best energy, so warm,
Yeah.
and she had great stories.
Great stories. And it's like, I love that moment when you realize you made this character. Like, you only her could have done Elizabeth. And that
Yeah.
really came through how she spoke about things, her own love of facts, and just her passion and her desire to see people grow and change. Like that ending statement, really lovely. I was very moved by the whole thing.
I loved how she always knew she wanted to be a writer and that she wrote a book as so little, and even the fact she wrote a book at, 12 was
Yeah.
it? And it was never taken
In the
out.
library.
Imagine if you had that book today. I wonder where it is.
I know.
I actually held on to that. That's
Right.
an Aries woman right there.
Yes, so amazing. And thank you, book friends, for joining us for such a brilliant discussion. And while it may not be a lesson in chemistry, I think you'll enjoy our watch-alike this month, The Great American Recipe. It's a heartwarming cooking competition where home cooks from across the country bring their own recipes, cultural background, and personal stories to the table. Much like lessons in chemistry, the show isn't just about cooking. It's about the connection between food, culture, and identity. Season 4 is airing now on PBS, and past seasons of the show are available now on pbs.org and through the PBS app.
Now we want to invite you to stay connected by joining the PBS Books Readers Club Facebook group, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and subscribing to our fun and bookish e-newsletter at pbsbooks.org/subscribe.
And know that these PBS Books Author Talks rely on donations. You play a huge role in making this happen when you support PBS.
To join your book friends in supporting these events, just click the link in the description or comments, or visit pbsbooks.org/donate.
You'll be taken to your local PBS station's donation page where you can find PBS Books swag as our thanks for your donation. I am personally obsessed with the PBS Books Readers Club book bag. I use it to haul all my books home from the library. It's so perfect. And you can also get the official PBS Books mug, My Weekend is Booked, which is all too true. Plus, as a member of your PBS station, you'll get access to PBS Passport and incredible shows like The Great American Recipe, Masterpiece, and more.
Okay, book clubbers, you probably want to know what the next book pick is. Well, as a special thank you to our loyal subscribers, we're going to make the announcement first in our e-newsletter.
Sign up for the PBS Books e-newsletter at pbsbooks.org/subscribe to make sure you don't miss our next book pick announcement, along with other great book recommendations.
And subscribe to our YouTube channel for more amazing reads and hundreds of author interviews.
We'll see you next time. Thank you for being a part of the PBS Books Readers Club.